Again. Welcome again. This is the third and last segment regards the edTPA. For those of you who are student teachers, we are going to, and I'm in the process of scheduling, a 4-session workshop to take place either late January or early February for more hands-on type of experiences with the edTPA project. I just came from a meeting in which we are outlining in very simple form what must be done for each of the lessons plans in the lesson segment. Please keep in mind, they refer to a lesson segment which does not equal a lesson plan. A lesson segment usually consists of 3 to 5 lesson plans. And you have to identify, as we discussed under the planning segment, you have to identify the focus of the lesson and add to it why that is the focus, etc., etc. But we've gone over that. I also said to you that if you would like to have a copy of a booklet put together by Professor Kellner in regards to theories, which really some of theories, that will be provided to you. So we're looking at the package that's labeled Task 3 or Session 3. But I'm going to be going back and forth to the other task as we do this. Let me first of all comment in regards to the video again. In the video, don't forget that you need to write 6 single-spaced pages answering certain questions. The first prompt is which lesson or lessons are shown in the clips. Identify the lessons by lesson plan number. I'm advocating, but you don't have to do this, that the lesson plan that you utilized for the first task 1, which is planning segment, can also be used for this. It's important for you to practice the commentary as early as possible in the course, in the beginning of your student teaching experience. That's what we're going to be doing in those 4 workshop sessions that will take place end of January and the beginning of February, so that when you go to submit what you're actually going to do, you at least had a chance to get some feedback on that commentary. And the feedback can't be as specific as you think, because this has to be all your material. And don't forget, you're going to send everything to the digitization of edTPA for filing. So each of the lesson plans, so you would say this is lesson plan 1, lesson plan 2, lesson plan 3, and when they say identify the lesson plan number, that's all they are referring to. Simply the lesson plan number. So it's lesson plan 1, that's number 1, if that's the way you chose to do it. That material on the video you should have in your folders, and if you do not have that in your folders, I can easily send that to you. Again, the email is napolia, Napolia, at stjohns.edu. In your folder, you have task 2, which is the video, and that is in folder 3 or task 3 folder. So all of the prompts are there. I'll just give you a second to open up that material and to see if you have any questions on that. If you come down to number 4, or when you come down to number 4, 4A, explain how you elicited student responses to promote thinking and apply the literacy strategy using requisite skills to comprehend or compose text. Remember, I simply have chosen to use the elementary literacy lesson plan on this. On the last segment also, I provided you a copy of the assessment of the rubrics that are going to be used to determine whether or not you achieve a grade of 42 or higher, which is the passing grade for the edTPA. The edTPA has 15 rubrics. Each rubric is 5, so the total number, the highest grade you get is 75, And the state has determined, I think it's a national norm now, the state has determined a passing grade of 42. Rubric 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 all deal with the assessment. And I want to spend some time on this. First of all, in task 3 is the outline of what you must write in regards to literacy, in regards to the assessment commentary. That is made up of 8 single-spaced pages. Remember, no more than a font 11 to be used. And there are 4 questions. There's also a task 4, but that task 4 only applies to childhood education. That's on the math. Okay. So, again, you could go back to the original lesson segment that you used to answer some of these questions. For example, the first one was identify the specific standards objectives from the lesson plans measured by the assessment chosen for analysis. So you can use the same lesson plan all the way through. You don't have to rewrite your lesson segments or create another lesson segment unless you choose to do so. And that has to be accompanied, attached to your commentary for that area. Keep that in mind. And by the way, the pages of that lesson segment are not included in the total number of pages that you need in order to fulfill these specific tasks. 1B, provide the evaluation criteria you're using to analyze the student learning. In my opinion, of the 3 tasks that you must respond to, the most difficult is that of assessment. So if you go to the rubric assessments that I provided you, and if you open up rubric 11, and the question on the rubric 11 is, how does the candidate analyze evidence of student learning? Now, this is very, very important. I mean, we should have been doing this all along, and in many cases, fine teachers have been doing this. The lowest level, level 1, states that there is no analysis, or the analysis is superficial, and is not supported by work samples or the summary of student learning. This is extremely important. If you go to level 3, the analysis focuses on what students did right and wrong, and is supported with evidence from the summary and work samples. Analysis includes some differences in whole class learning, as opposed to whole class learning, as opposed to differentiated classes where you have ELL and special ed students, etc. Level 5 is analysis uses specific evidence from work samples to demonstrate the connections between quantitative and qualitative patterns of student learning for individuals or groups. Now, if you recall, going way back, if you go over your glossary of terms, they speak of work samples in a different term that is used, and it's important that you keep that in mind when you are identifying work samples. The second rubric, or rubric 12, what type of feedback does the candidate provide to focus students? This also should be practiced, and how they do this. The highest level candidate describes how she will guide focus students to use feedback to evaluate their own strengths and needs. I think I told you that what I used to do is for every one of the activities I was using for the assessment of student learning, I would have a rubric. So there was a rubric for writing, there was a rubric for oral presentations. I insisted on the Cornell University notebook model, so there was a rubric for that. There was a rubric for debates. Every activity that I used in regards to both informal and formal assessments, I had a rubric for. And at some point, I would stop putting a grade on the paper or the activity, but give back to the students the feedback reflecting that rubric, and then the students would have to give me what grade they should receive. And if there was great dissonance, and sometimes there was, I would then meet with the student afterwards to help them understand the feedback. Otherwise, the students will not use the feedback correctly. This is important, so that, let's say when I was teaching the opening paragraph of an argumentative or persuasive essay, I would give the rubric of what I'm looking for in that opening paragraph. And when the student finishes writing that paragraph of a persuasive essay, I would give feedback based on that rubric, so that that would help them develop the ability to write an opening paragraph. And the same thing for a closing paragraph. We can't assume that the students know how to do this. You want to use the same thing also in narrative writing, etc. Rubric 13, how does the candidate provide opportunities for focused students to use the feedback to guide their further learning? I gave you an example. I gave you an example whereby I would not give them a grade, but that they would have to use the feedback provided in order to aid them in developing those skills, that knowledge of content, etc., in order for a paper or presentation or a debate to be considered effective. All of that has to become part of the prompt. I think I said to you last time, or the first time I spoke to you, that really assessments should be found throughout your learning segment. So that many times you'll be writing similar type of things. So that, example, when you are dealing with the planning commentary, you write in the planning commentary how you're going to assess the various groups that you have in your class. And it says, use principles from research and/or theory to support your explanations where appropriate. So it's important that throughout both task 1, planning segment, task 2, the video, which is called the instructional segment, and also task 3, dealing with the assessment segment, that assessment appears throughout all of this. Rubric 14, question is, how does the candidate analyze students' use of language to develop content understanding? I'll give you level 3 first. Candidate explains and provides evidence of students' use of language function as well as vocabulary or additional language demands. Now remember, this is a literacy learning segment. In this particular case, an example would be use of syntax, use of many other vehicles that you have to point out to the students that they're giving evidence of use of language function. Alliteration would be another example of that. Level 5, which is the highest level, candidates explain and provide evidence of language use and content learning for students with varied needs. I'm not saying this is easy. This is difficult, and it builds on what was required or what was done in your coursework. And the last part of the assessment, how does the candidate use the analysis of what students know and are able to do to plan next steps in instruction? This is extremely important. Let's say you start a lesson, and you're going through the lesson, and you want the lesson, you want one segment of the lesson to demonstrate that students can translate and analyze a rather difficult paragraph. I used, because this is the most difficult document in our history, the Declaration of Independence. So, an example would be, I have the students read the first paragraph, which, as I said before, is only one sentence. Then I have the students, on their own, write a complete sentence in their own words, not using any of the words in the paragraph, to translate what is being said in this sentence. I'm doing a few things now. I'm testing reading comprehension. I'm testing their ability to think and write in their own words. And I'm also testing the structure of the sentence that they produce. Let's assume that 60% 50%, in my case, it was 20% of the students did not get this right or could not do the task. If that's the objective I have for assessing, I can't continue to go on because they do not understand that. Students don't understand the first part of the paragraph. When in the course of human events, I would stop there if I'm retesting or reteaching and say, what does that mean? Why did he have to, or they have to, because there were 5 men who drew up the Declaration of Independence, not only Thomas Jefferson. Why did they have to use the word human? That's tough. It may be too tough for 5th graders, but definitely 7th graders and 11th graders should be able to handle that type of analysis that takes place. So those are all of the rubrics that are used in the assessment. And when I was up in Albany and I was grading papers or grading videos, the lowest scores were always on the assessment part. And as you know, I read, we have about 250 fellows in the field that are observed by consultants that we employ. And I read every observation that comes in. Often the lesson plans are fine, but the lesson plans do not include how they're going to assess student progress, how they're going to assess that the students meet the objectives that have been set forth in the lesson plan, which is part of the lesson segment. Let me just get back, something just came to mind. When you write the lesson segment, each of the lesson plans should be building on each other. You can't keep that separately. So that when you're writing lesson number 2 of a 5 lessons for lesson segment, okay, that should be building on number 1. Number 3 should be building on number 2 and number 1, etc., etc. So there are always assessments taking place through each lesson plan that comprises the lesson segment. So if you open up your task 3 for a moment, and you go to, just give me 1 second, literary assessment commentary. You will see that each of the commentaries require you, and it can't be more than 8 pages, requires you to address all of the issues found in rubrics 11 to 15. Example, 1C, provide a graphic table or chart or narrative summary of student learning for your whole class. Be sure to summarize student learning for all evaluation criteria described above. So I put in your folder, I'm trying to retrieve it right now, I put into your folder a chart on literacy. This is the chart that was used by this particular person, okay? And this chart breaks down the activities that are taking place and it also reflects the makeup of the class and how the class is achieving all of this. If you go down to 2, feedback to guide further learning. I always suggest, as I said before, that you write the rubrics for every area. I've included in your packet examples for each grade level. Work with one of your peers in order to write the rubrics so that those of you teaching American history in grade 7 are doing the same thing for the teacher next door who also is doing that, teaching the same course in grade 7. If you again go to analyze student learning, 1A, which deals with the issue of identify the specific standard objectives from the lesson plans measured by the assessment chosen for analysis, I gave you a sample response. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but let me read out a sample response dealing with identify the specific standard objectives from the lesson plans measured by the assessment chosen for analysis. The specific standard measured by the chosen assessment is to, quote, use active comprehensive strategies to derive meaning while reading and check for understanding after reading, to derive meaning while reading by making inferences and recognize unstated assumptions. So the example I gave to you as a Declaration of Independence, that first paragraph, okay, you would do the same type of thing. In this particular case, the objective being assessed was stated as students will be able to demonstrate their understanding of the process of making inferences. So what the person included in their response to this prompt is going back and restating the objective so that the reader can make the connection between the objective that you established and also to see how you responded to that prompt. Now, provide a graphic table or chart or narrative summary of student learning for your whole class. Be sure to summarize student learning for all evaluation criteria described above. Here's the response. A majority of students either met expectations or exceeded expectations for the main course activity that they chose from the inference menu based on individual scores from the rubric. And below this, and you can see it was the rubric used by the teacher. A different, for the appetized activity, 65% of the students met or exceeded the expectations, whereas 72% met or exceeded expectations for the main course activity. That's what they want you to show. You can do it either in narrative form or you can do it by a graph. And there's a graph on the bottom of the sheet that I'm making reference to. Do not be concerned with the length of the sample feedbacks that I've given you, because they are quite extensive. In the back of that, you have sample students list. And by the way, these are called artifacts. And you include artifacts in this. And when you send your material to edTPA Digitize, the artifacts should be included. I'm looking at Dr. Cho to get a nod. And he just nodded yes. Okay. So, include these artifacts that you're going to use. And here I have a 4th grade paragraph. Here's the writing prompt. Describe what lunchtime is like for you on a school day. Be sure to tell about your lunchtime so that someone who has never had lunch with you on a school day can understand where you have lunch and what lunchtime is like. And here's the student's statement. My lunchtime is loud. Almost everybody is in the lunchroom, is making noise. We have very good food and nice cooks. We have 35 minutes to eat lunch. My lunchroom is big and has a lot of tables. We have milk and a salad bar for the teachers. That is what my lunchroom is about. If you look at this, I know some of you are 11th grade teachers or high school teachers, etc. What type of feedback would you give this student in order to improve this narrative summary? And by the way I read it to you with some of my own mental corrections. There are spelling errors here, etc. You can see this type of thing. Then I gave you an example of 8th grade writing. Imagine that you wake up one morning to discover that you have become the President of the United States. Write a story about your first day as president. Now, I'm not going to read this to you, but this is the 8th grade sample that you can see in front of you. And it contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs. Okay? What type of feedback would you provide on this sample? And you have to practice this. And I would say that you go around with your 8th grade fellows who are teaching both English and social studies and other subjects, give out this example, and then look at the feedback that each individual gets to see if there is differences in feedback. I guarantee you there are. I know you recall that in some cases a teacher would give you an A for this, in some cases a C for this, and maybe a teacher may give you an F for this. Part of that is driven by the fact that, 1, that there's not agreement on the rubric, 2, the students were never given a written rubric to make reference to, so therefore they're just writing on their own. And then I provided you an 11th grade essay dealing with a raisin in the sun. And I forget what the prompt is, but in the play, the student starts off, this is the first paragraph. In the play, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry, I can most relate to the conflict between Walter and Benita. Walter and Benita are brother and sister. They do not get along very well, and both of them are very outspoken people. This is an 11th grade paragraph. Just based upon that paragraph that I read to you, what type of feedback will you give? These artifacts, as I said, I want to underline this, must be included in your presentations to the state and also to what you said to Dr. Cho and edTPA digitalization. With that, let me remind you again, in a very short period of time, and somewhat in a rush fashion, I've given you an overview of the edTPA project, which I hope has not caused more existential havoc than that which already exists. I encourage you to come to see me in Sullivan Hall, room 525, for a sit-down to further bring about clarification. I encourage you to email me if you have any questions on the edTPA project. I encourage you to look for the announcement of the 4-session workshops that will take place during the year. And I hope that this has been helpful to you. I'll probably redo this again in the spring once I get feedback as to the usefulness of these presentations. Thank you, and we're here at St. John's University to support all of your efforts.